show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control. Brad and John, they're the ones to follow. Yeah, ready for the ride. It's the BJ Show. BJ Show.
While other people are enjoying a day off, and if you scan around the radio dial, you notice that most of your regular hosts are not here today because of the fact it's a quote-unquote holiday. John Combest has gotten out of bed, suited up, and is ready to roll for the BJ Show. John, what a trooper. I'm telling you.
Oh, Brad, you know what? You are quite a role model in that regard. And because you've been doing it forever. In fact, you have so much dedication to holidays that I have it on good authority that you once went to your job on Christmas and got fired.
Yeah, I did. Matter of fact, it was funny. I was telling that story over the weekend to somebody who didn't believe me. I go, I got fired on Christmas Day one year, and they went, what? I know, seriously. Okay. That is John Combest. He puts together this list every single day for the past 23 years. Just had his anniversary last month, but we won't give the date out because that's a highly guarded secret. Although, can't you just go back to the very first post on your page and say, oh, there it is right there?
You could. And you know the date, Brad. But you know what? I kind of like that to quote Sarah McLachlan or some other songstress, we're building a mystery. We're not saying when the official anniversary is.
Oh, man, you and Taylor Swift. John puts together this list every single day, which he deems to be important stuff around the state of Missouri. Now, we bring in this guy, and I have to hit the button here because I'm doing something different now. We have to bring in this guy right here.
I'm Casey Kasem.
And we task him with the job of counting it down for us, and he does it very well. Right, Casey?
Now on with the countdown.
And he starts us off with...
In third place...
A good old-fashioned turf war, Brad, is brewing between Missouri's governor, Mike Parson, and St. Louis County Executive Sam Page. Brad, if you were to take a gander, or a guess, I should say, what do you think this fight is about? Do you happen to know?
Well, I know who's going to win. You know how?
Who's going to win?
Because Sam Page is going to anesthetize Mike Parson, and he's just going to pass out, and Sam's going to go, I told you, I would win. He's passed out. I can do whatever I want now.
That's one of the best. First of all, that's a little bit creepy and sounds like the plot of a homoerotic story. Secondly, I think Sam can anesthetize people, usually just by giving a speech. In third place, though, Brad, is actually the fact that Wesley Bell has been elected to Congress. So his spot as St. Louis County prosecutor is open. Now, Brad, if you were to guess here, I know this isn't the Quiz Brad show, but if you were to guess, who gets to appoint a vacant spot of St. Louis County prosecutor?
That's interesting. Is that the problem? Is it murky as to is it the county executive or is it the governor?
You're exactly right. And not only is it murky of who has that power, but there seems to be a really good battle of spin going on here. Now, Brad, when this story came out last week, I'll give you the nuts and bolts of it. In general, Governor Parson said, hey, everybody, you're interested in being the next St. Louis County prosecutor? Apply here. Inquire within. Sam Page said, whoa, not so fast. Listen, St. Louis County folks, if you want to apply, send those resumes to me. So we had two guys who were saying they were going to be in charge of the hiring process. And last week, AG Andrew Bailey sent a letter to county officials and said, okay, I know you guys seem to think that you might have the power to appoint here, but actually under Missouri revised statutes, and then he named the statute, the governor has the authority to apply this position, to appoint this position. So I thought, Brad, the St. Louis County Executive's Office made a really good point, I thought, which was, there was a vacancy in St. Charles County in 2023, and Steve Ellman appointed the new prosecutor. So Governor Parson, why is there a double standard here? And Brad, I thought that was really a salient point. It turns out that the governor's point and AG Andrew Bailey's point is that, yes, the governor does have the power to appoint, but in some cases, he could choose to defer that power to a county executive. And in fact, Brad, it appears as though that's what happened last year in St. Charles County. The governor said, okay, we trust County Executive Steve Ellman to do the right thing, to make a decent pick. So we're going to let him pick the St. Charles County prosecutor. But we don't trust St. Louis County Executive Sam Page. And I think the language that they used was something more to the effect of, with the importance of the crime issue in the St. Louis metro region, we need to be assured that the whatever. In other words, we don't trust you, Sam Page, to make a decent appointment, so we're going to do it ourselves. So, as you might expect, Brad, all of these stories, all the news coverage end with the fact that, well, we'll just see. This is probably going to end up in litigation.
Well, isn't it also a little bit of the relationship status? This, let's be honest, and I'm not trying, once again, I sound like I'm like the fanboy for Steve Ellman, but I've had some dealings with Steve, and Steve is one of these guys that just gets things done. You know what I mean? He's not flashy, and you somehow, at least my feeling is, when you're dealing with Steve, and I've had situation with Steve, things that I've talked to Steve about, that he's disagreed on, and I go, okay, fine, I understand where you're coming from, but you get the impression that he's doing it from a very reasoned standpoint, whereas with Sam Page, not necessarily. You know what I'm saying? Isn't it a trust issue?
Yeah, I do get what you're saying. And let's not forget the fact that there could just be some plain old partisanship in here, Brad. And I think that if you are Governor Parson and you're a law and order guy, you think, do I trust a St. Louis metro region? Do I trust a guy who's essentially joined at the hip with Tashara Jones on crime issues and other issues? Or do I just want to appoint my own person? And I think the governor would make the argument that to the victor is the spoils. And if he has the right, he should flex it.
Well, essentially what you're saying is that Steve Ellman is a Repub and Sam Page is a Dem and Mike Parson is a Repub. So that says it all right there, correct?
Yeah, I think so. And I just don't think that the governor is going to trust Sam Page on anything.
Okay. Number 2.
Up a notch to number 2.
It is the time of year where reporters go through last Tuesday's election results and try to find trends, try to find stories, try to find something interesting about the data. And in fact, the Jefferson City News Tribune today points to an interesting fact about Donald Trump. And that is, Brad, that Donald Trump received more votes in 2024 than he received in his previous 2 elections. So despite the fact that we have a president who is a fascist and a Nazi and holds white supremacist rallies at Madison Square Garden, more Missourians in 2024 selected Donald Trump, chose Donald Trump than they did in previous years. And Brad, that is not only in absolute vote terms, but also in percentage terms in the state of Missouri. The other interesting breakdown of numbers here, Brad, and I haven't seen this in any news story, so maybe we're breaking news here. And I do need to be fact-checked on this. So anybody who's been involved in Missouri's U.S. Senate races should fact-check me on this. But I went back, and at a cursory glance, Lucas Kunce performed the worst among any Democrat U.S. Senate candidate this entire century. Despite all the fundraising and despite all the headlines about his celebrities and how much money he was bringing in, it appears as though, Brad, that he did worse than any other Democrat this century. No one this century. Nancy Farmer wasn't as bad of a candidate as Lucas Kunce. Robin Carnahan wasn't as bad of a candidate as Lucas Kunce. So I doubt we'll hear that from any mainstream Missouri reporter, because that would seem to suggest that Josh Hawley is doing a good job in D.C. But I believe that's an accurate fact, Brad.
Now, is that by percentage or actual votes?
It's by percentage.
Percentage. So in other words, I mean, because obviously as you go through the years, the number of people voting has, I would say over the last century, has increased quite a bit. And because you did say the last century, right?
No, this century.
This century.
In the 21st century.
I'm sorry. Okay, so in other words, in the last 25 years.
Okay. Well, you're biased, Brad, because you're 89.
Well, yeah, and 1 foot on a banana, 1 foot on the grave. So that's the
and
way
now,
it is.
wait a minute, Brad. Real quick, do we have a date during the year that we celebrate your kayfabe birthday?
Yeah, it's February 30th every year. February 30th every year.
Mine is September 32nd. So,
September
but yours is
32nd.
February 30th. That's so good, Brad. That's so funny.
Right.
I might actually steal February 30th and start using that.
I've used that before, and people go, "Oh, really? Yeah." And they write it down and go like, "Okay." They don't quite get the joke, Okay, number one. Here we go.
The number one.
We may have found a unicorn, Brad. For the last glorious year that I've been blessed to share the airwaves with you, these sacred airwaves with you, you and I have spent a good bit of time making fun of academics, making fun of higher education. But thanks to the Springfield News Leader and KSMU down in Springfield and some other news outlets, I think I have found an educator, I should say a higher education administrator with a sense of humor. And this gentleman's name is Richard Williams. Don't you dare call him Dick. Don't call him Dick, Brad. He goes by the nickname of Biff. So I'm guessing that he was probably inspired by the movie Back to the Future. But Biff Williams came to Missouri State University down in Springfield, down in the southwest part of the state. He came from Utah State University. But Brad, it turns out it looks like Mr. Williams has a bit of a sense of humor, and that got him maybe chased out at Utah State. I'll give you the skinny, Brad. One of his friends, one of his legit friends, not just a coworker, a guy named Jordan Sharp was a vice president at Utah State. And Mr. Williams' buddy, Jordan Sharp, Brad, he had a little outpatient procedure. He had a vasectomy. Are you following me so far?
Well, yeah, but I don't know how too closely, but keep going.
So Mr. Williams one day thought it would be funny to go to his friend's house. And the day after the vasectomy, he left a zucchini and a couple eggplants in a phallus shape on Mr. Sharp's doorstep and left a little note there that says, "Hey, we've heard about your outpatient procedure. We thought you could enjoy some delicious fruit as you recover over the next few days." Mr. Williams, who was the president at Utah State, then signed the letter with the name of the general counsel and the deputy general counsel and also the DEI head, the woman who was in charge of Title IX. Now, Mr. Sharp thought that this was hilarious. He's recovering from his vasectomy. I'm guessing he's sitting on an ice pack for a while. He gets on the group chat, Brad, with all his fellow administrators, his coworkers, and says, "Okay, gang, who's responsible for this?" And a lot of people chime in and they're like, "Oh, it's definitely Becky. She's the real serious senior counsel. She's the official counsel at Utah State." So everybody has a good laugh about it. But you know who doesn't have a laugh about it, Brad?
Biff?
No. Here's who doesn't have a laugh about it. The administrators who were wrongly framed for this crime, Brad. They had nothing to do with the vulgar display. I'll cut to the chase. This is the most interesting detail. In the lawsuit by those three signatories, Brad, it was not funny what Mr. Williams did in framing them in this disgusting, the exact words were, they were shocked and embarrassed by this vulgar display and by the effort to frame them for this zucchini and eggplant display. And they're suing, Brad. They're suing under Title IX because guess what? This kind of stuff isn't funny. And it's a toxic workplace, Brad. Really, when you make phallic jokes and attempt to frame it on other people, well, it's about time for that administrator to go. Now, the good news is, Brad, before we break this whole thing down, the good news is, reading between the lines in this story, it appears as though Mr. Williams was like, "Are you kidding me? I'm out of here." He left, which as I read between the lines of these stories, was a surprise to the folks at Utah Tech, and decided to come to Missouri State University instead. Missouri State University hired Mr. Williams. They had three finalists who were all highly qualified, and they chose Mr. Williams. And as of now, Brad, Missouri State University seems to be standing by Mr. Williams. They say they're aware of this. it appears as though they said they were aware of this and that they don't seem to be too bothered by the zucchini and eggplant prank. So, Brad, what do you think of this?
So the three administrators that he put down as their name in jest, they actually sued him?
Yeah, they're suing him, and they've named 24 other defendants, Brad, because they allege that the incident was part of a toxic, hostile, and, quote, poison well work environment. And to add insult to injury, the DEI lady says that she also got an email one time that seemed hostile toward her from somebody. It wasn't from Mr. Williams, I don't believe. But she also received at some point in her employment some sort of email that seemed to be a little hostile to her. And they described the eggplant and zucchini thing as, quote, vulgar, sexual, and obscene.
You know, man, don't get me going on this kind of stuff, John. I mean, first off, this shows more and more and more how our universities have, I shouldn't broad brush it, but there are quite a few of them that have degenerated into this crazy, weird, super woke, bizarro world that they live in. And unfortunately, it's like a small universe that they live in. You know what I mean? It's to the point where, like, they live on another planet, and they don't live on the same planet as us. And that's part of the thing where I get so frustrated about the current state of education, especially the college education stuff. I had something happen over the weekend where I had someone, a very intelligent person make a comment about the fact that what I need to do is start like some kind of a grant program or like an award program for like one of the universities where we would essentially promote good journalism and stuff like that. And I think it's a great idea, but the problem on that is here's the problem. People are going to say, well, the idea you have is good journalism. It's not necessarily what journalism is nowadays, because journalism has turned into advocacy. And once again, it's this crazy woke thing, from the universities. I mean, they live in there. I've said this before. You hear this common thing that they say, hey, knowledge is power. And I always say, no, that's not true, because if knowledge was power, the most powerful people, the richest people, would be all the college professors, when in actuality, they're probably the least powerful people, because for the most part, they live in a town just to the south of Crapville. You know where the town south of Crapville is?
What's that, Brad?
They live in Nerdville, okay? And that's where they live. And they have this little protective bubble that they live in, which is called the college or the university, and they can get away with all this kind of crap. So the guy's got a sense of humor. I'm thinking to myself, so what's wrong with having a sense of humor? And once again, the guy that he did it to, did he sue him? No, he thought it was funny,
he thinks
right?
it's funny.
He thinks it's funny. God, I just don't know.
What I love most about these type of stories is when people are offended on behalf of other people. Like, the guy who got the vasectomy isn't mad. So the folks who clearly the general counsel did not actually leave the zucchini and the eggplant there, but she's offended not only on behalf of herself, but on behalf of the guy that got the vasectomy. Now, you can make the argument, Brad. It's easy to do in hindsight. You can make the argument that, okay, you should expect at a university that a DEI queen and a general counsel boss girl lady aren't going to have a sense of humor about a vasectomy, right? Like, I guess you could, in hindsight, you could anticipate that nobody's going to have a sense of humor about it. But if you read this and you're, let's say, a straight white male who's thinking about getting into higher education, and you see something like this, you just think, nah, I don't know if these are my people.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, it's, once again, how many times have you had a job where the job was, actually a good job, which you enjoyed, but the working environment was, shall we say, less than positive?
It drives people away, yeah.
Right.
And that's so much of it. And so much of it, there's so many studies about how your direct manager affects your day-to-day disposition. Right. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Okay, we have to take a break. We'll be back. And Pastor Brad is going to make a brief appearance in B Block, which is up next.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?